In the sky is something to watch. We talked about the moon. There's solar eclipses and there's lunar eclipses. There's an event in 2014 and 2015 called a Tetrad. A Tetrad is from Tetra for 4. There are going to be 4 blood moons in 2014 and 4 blood moons in 2015. A Tetrad means there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. This Tetrad is 4 over 2 years. Now, what's interesting about this here, and it's happened before in history, this is the 8th time since Christ. The 8th time. New beginnings, transformation, transfiguration, chet, the gate, the passageway, the opening. The first one is, in next year, is on a Jewish holiday. The first one is going to be right here. Where art thou, my red, I like you. The first one's going to be on a Passover. And next year, the last one's going to be on Sukkot. The first one's on the first holiday next year. And the last one's on the last holiday. It's the first and the last. Now, in Hebrew, since the Bible has no chapter-verse markings, you'll hear this other places, but now you'll hear a Hebrew understanding. And tell them, because we all need to know. Jesus is the first and last, yes? It points of Him. 1. 2, since you didn't have chapter-verse markings, how would you know what chapter 53 is in the Bible, since 53 is an invention that came centuries later? Chapters and verses came in the 13th and 15th centuries AD. You used sections, and you would mention the first verse, like in Psalm 22, and the last verse, which Jesus did on the cross. And that meant the whole chapter refers to me. So when you say the first and the last, it means everything in between. It all counts together. So when you have a blood red moon, and the blood red moons relate to, who does the moon relate to? Yareach. Yareach relates to the bride. And Israel is God's bride as a nation. Solar eclipses relate to the nations, the Goyim. Lunar eclipses relate to the bride. In this case, Israel, because you're not going to be here. That makes sense? When it's covered and it's blocked, not the concealed, it's covered this way. When it's the first and last lunar eclipse, that means there's trouble. This is under judgment through the whole time. Now, there's 2 of those next year, but it's a Tetrad. In 2015, that's in 2014, right? This is 2014. You have a Tetrad. We tested, we looked everything up. This is on NASA's site. We double-checked it. Everything's there. 2015, you have the same thing. Thus, 2 and 2 is 4, a Tetrad. 4 blood red moons over 2 years. In 2015, it's the same thing. There's one on Passover, and there's one at the end as well. By the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, everything will be confirmed. Now, in addition to that, well, let's stay with that for a moment. Mike, you want to put the ones up I have starting on this page 27. Let's just mention to you, you had this before. In 162 to 163, actually, you had it right before that. You had it in 32, 33 AD, around the time of the cross, another Tetrad. First and last, Passover and Sukkot. You had another one, 162 to 163. Okay? Passover and Tabernacles. This concluded with a horrible persecution in the Roman time of both Jew and Christian. The Antonine plague killed about 8 million, some say 5 to 8 million, about a third of the population. There's always a time, it was either a time of great blessing or great tribulation, but always the bride was involved. The third one, this is going through history. 795 to 796, King Charlemagne established a protective zone between France and Spain, ending the Arabic invasions or incursions into Western Europe. He became, in the year 800, the Pope put a crown on his head, and he became a leader that's known through history. Then, following, we have 842 to 843, another Tetrad. The Vatican Church in Rome was robbed, eluded by Islamic invaders from Africa. Either great blessing or great trouble and afflictions. These are the Tetrads through history up to next year. Then, 840... 860, 861, I like this. Shortly after this Tetrad, the Byzantine Empire defeated the Arab armies at the Battle of Lalakaon in Turkey, which is ancient Asia Minor in the book of Revelation. It permanently stopped the Islamic invasions into Eastern Europe. You see Charlemagne stopping it at the west, then the Byzantines stopping them from the east, because the Islamic invasions were trying to conquer the entire world. And these were signs in the skies, which you have in Genesis 1, 14 to 19. I set them in the sky for signs and for seasons. These are to tell you things. These are signs. I'm talking to you that everybody could see it at the same time while looking up on a big screen. Next. 1493, 1494. Good, you fixed that. I had 1992. Good job, thank you. That was like too close. Spain, after about 200 AD, became a second Jewish world center after Israel for over a millennia. Spain was it. They had the Sephardic Jews that came from Spain. Maimonides, who was called the second Moses, was a Spanish doctor out of Spain. King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella ordered all Jews out of the country. You watch what happened in Spain. You study Spanish history, it went like this here. Wasn't the people. There's a few leaders. But where a leader leads, a country goes. On June 30th, 1492, the entire 200,000 Jewish population of Spain was thrown out. Where do you go? They were thrown out. They went different places. They died along the way. I don't want to recount to you some of the horrors that happened to them along the way, where some of the Spanish people were told that they had swallowed jewelry and coins and all this here, and they would beat them up, cut them up, and look to see if they had gold and things that they swallowed to take with them there. It was merciless there. These people died horrifically. Many died en route to a place of safety. Interesting enough, you may know this guy, Christopher Cohen, by his other name, Columbus. Cohen, a Messianic Jew. If you look at any of his private letters, he signed it, he put a little symbol on the top, BH, Baruch Hashem. Wow. Blessed be the name. Wow. What do you think he was looking for? Get out of Dodge. You know, hey, could we have a new land, please? They're killing all my people here. Change your name. A lot of Jews, when they came to America, did. First to be American, and others to pull away from anti-Semitism. Especially since the United States took in a lot of Germans after World War II and put them in war projects there, including like Plum Island up in the Northeast. Yeah. Christopher Columbus in the same year found the land nearby to America. Eventually the land of America would be a home to about 5 million Jews. America is blessed today for their Christian faith and an observance of Genesis 12:3. I'll bless those that bless you, and those that curse you I will curse, because in you all the families of the earth will be blessed. So, when you come from that, you come up to the next. 1949-50. Remember Israel on May 14th, 1948? So this is the next year. It became a nation. After about 200 years, Israel becomes a nation on May 14th, 1948. It established its government actually on January 25th, 1949. And so that Tetrad, those 2 years, it's 2 blood red moons, Passover, Sukkot, first and last. Next year, Passover and Sukkot. 2 years consecutive. Witness, witness, King of kings, Lord of lords, moons of moons. 4. It just shouts in your face, because this doesn't happen every day. And every time it's happened in the last 2,000 years, it was a momentous time in humanity for the bride, or Israel, or the nation, for those two. Next one, 1967 to 68. Remember the 1967 June War, the 6-Day War? Here it is. Tetrad's wham, right in the sky again. Wham, 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 wham. 4 of them. Passover, Sukkot, first and last, 1 year, next year, sandwiched together. Now, in this time, 67, 68, you have Israel regaining much of its land, but not all of its promised land that was promised to Abraham in the Abrahamic covenant. 1949, 50, Israel gets back its land. 1967, it now has full control of Jerusalem here. The next one that's coming is next year, 2014 and 15, and there'll be nothing else till 2172. It's off the charts. There will be nothing else for a long time. So this is next year. It's coming again. Next year, we have specific dates and all. It's coming. It's something you can easily find out. But I want to show you, embedded with that is an interesting thing. In 2015, you have 2 solar eclipses. You have, on March 20th, 2015, the first of Nisan, and September 13th, 2015, on Rosh Hashanah, Zichron Teruah, the day of trumpets, the day of the awakening blast. So now you have, in next year, not only in 2014 you have 2 solar eclipses. In 2015, you have 2 solar eclipses. I'm sorry, 2014 and 15, you have 2 lunar eclipses. 2015, you have 2 lunar. But in 2015, on the 1st of Nisan, which is the beginning of the civil calendar, now it's with the calendar, is a solar eclipse, which deals with the nations, the Goyim. And the same year, at the other end, at the beginning, now they're both beginnings, the beginning of sorrows, beginning of sorrows, the beginning of sorrows. Now you have the nations under this kind of judgment. God, the sun is blocked, now the nations. Remember, the moon is blocked, that she's under some kind of judgment or unusual blessing. Now the nations in 2015, the solar eclipse on the 1st of the civil calendar, 1st of Nisan, I'm sorry, the 1st of the, you have the religious calendar now, and then you have on Rosh Hashanah, the day of trumpets, the day of the awakening blessed, the day of the awakening shout, you have the other one over here, you have a solar eclipse over here right on the holiday. So you have one on the 1st of Tishrei, and the other solar eclipse you have on the 1st of Nisan. Now you have both calendars brought into effect. You can't make this stuff up. It's in your face. And its solar eclipses are sandwiched in between the lunars. It means we're out of time. It means we're going home. And now there's something to watch with all this here that skews some of the accuracy, not the information, but the interpretation. Because we're on borrowed time. We're overdue. My understanding is that God has set the clock back a little bit because we're not done. So we're in what is called a delay mode, and you have that in the Bible. In Matthew 25, the bridegroom tarries while the virgins are sleeping. But in Habakkuk 2, it says, though he tarries, he will not be late. So you don't have to worry. God's got that figured out. Why? Because God is still after that one who needs to hear now. Not everyone's going to make it to this. There are people who are going to die tonight somewhere in the world. And what are they going to do for the eternity? God's going to keep us on post until he says, you're good to go, and the time will be there. When the job is not done, we stay at our job and at our post because it's not done. And because God loves every single one out there, there's nobody going anywhere until that time. Now there's another item in the sky that's showing up, of which there's been 13 since, we didn't give you the notes in this, Mike, 13 since 1990, and it's called a grand sextile, and it looks just like a Jewish star. It's in the sky since June 29th this year up to August. It's already happened. This has appeared 13 times. The 13th time, you may have missed it, just appeared in the sky as the Star of David, the Seal of Solomon, in the sky. And it has planetary alignments of 6 planets that also spell out a story. And this is a sign in the sky of the Star of David. Now that Star of David is composed of a Hebrew letter. What is the Hebrew letter for? A dalet, right? In early Semitic writing, it used to be shaped like this. In Middle Semitic, it was shaped like this. In Late Semitic, it was shaped like that. It had different forms compared to the dalet we have today. If you look at the dalet, which equals 4, the way it was shaped in Middle Semitic writing systems, it was shaped exactly like a triangle. You had one triangle going up for man, and the other triangle coming down for God. The intersection of God-man. That's who Jesus is, the God-man. Is he not called the Son of David? He's called the Son of David. David, David. David is spelled with 2 dalets, is it not? Dawid. Now, this has 2 triangles, one here and one here. What does that equal? That equals 4 and 4 over here, right? When you put these 2 4s together, that equals what? 8. New beginnings. a gate. John 4:22, salvation is of the Jews. John 10:9, I am the gate, Jesus says. Revelation 22, Jesus says, I'm the root and the offspring of David. So when you see this here, the two triangles, I'm the root and the offspring of David. The root means he's divine, and the offspring of David means his humanity. God, man. And it intersects. It's a perfect alignment. The items are held at 60 degrees to each other. 60 degrees is samach in Hebrew, which is used for support. It's a perfect item in the sky. The Magen David, the shield of David. And this has been in the sky just a few weeks ago, and it's a time for a new beginning. Just to mention to you, one part here, you see Jupiter here, Mars here, Mercury here. And if you look at those stars and you put it together, Jupiter's tzedek, which is righteousness. And then Mars is dealing with, in Hebrew, ma'adim, blood, red, strength. Mercury is a burning, like in judgment. So you see the righteous one, in the strength of his blood, burning, bringing judgment on the world. And Pluto is at the other end over here. Now, what's interesting about Pluto, you don't have a Hebrew name for Pluto. In English, it means wealth. It was lately redesignated to be a dwarf planet. We grew up thinking Pluto was a planet, right? Now, in the best of science today, it's become a dwarf planet, or not even counted as a planet itself. You know who Pluto was in the secular world? The Roman god of the underworld, the god of Hades. And God will wage war with them. As he did before, he will do again. The Magen David, God-man, and shows up bright in the sky just a few weeks ago. We got to look up. We got to look in. We got to look around. God's talking all the time. Now, could you name another religion, faith, that puts the stars up there in a certain order that says the same thing as your Bible does? How do you make those things go where they're supposed to go, line up the way they're supposed to line up, say what they're supposed to say, and mean what they mean? This is the only book. This is the only true faith. I love the other people, but blind is blind. I had an argument with this guy at the gym once, a heated, passionate discussion. And he didn't handle the Trinity too well, but when we started talking about the signs in the sky, and a guy from India, he goes, I said, this is the only one with the Bible in the sky. And we talked about a few things. He goes, oh, that's interesting. He says, I got two small brothers. I'll tell them. Yeah, go tell them. Go right ahead. Go tell them. This is our time. This is our time. We're not getting any more time, but we have enough time. Now, tomorrow is Passover, Pesach. We did this teaching. I'll share a couple of things with you, and then we'll take a 5-minute break, come back, we'll do questions, and we're going to stay to about 8:30, 8:45, and then go to IHOP for those who would like to go. But we're going to make sure you hear some things before you go. We taught on this faithfully. It's in the back. The memorial feast, the memorial shout, the fifth feast. We did all of the feasts, Leviticus 23. And we focused also on the 8 blood red moons. Who doesn't know what the blood red moons are? Just raise your hand. Okay, you will. The blood red moons, thank you. The blood red moons are an astronomical event that signals ominous times. There have been 7 of them since the time of Christ. It's a tetrad. Tetrad for tetra for 4. There's 4 in a row. But these occur, there's been blood red moons throughout history. That's not the point. These occur on Moedim, Jewish high holy days, Jewish holy days. This year, it'll be on Passover, Pesach, starting tomorrow. And then the next one will be the end of the year, first and last Jewish holiday, Sukkot or Bus, Tabernacles. Next year, it'll be the same, first and last, Passover again, 2015, followed by the end of the year, a Sukkot or Bus. Now, when it happens on those particular holy days, this is the 8th, which represents 8 new beginnings, transformation, transfiguration, and the next step of growth and protection and a shielding of God. All the above on your Hebrew alphabet sheet under the letter Chet for gate or protection. This is the 8th since Christ. The first Tetrad was in the year 3233, and the best scholarship is Jesus was crucified in 33 AD, 4333. This either precedes, usually, or encompasses, or comes shortly after. Now, they've happened, they always signaled a tragedy, typically, to, in many cases, not all, but for the church, yes, and for the Jews, yes, from tragedy to triumph. From a tragedy to a triumph. Let's bring it up closer in time. Last century, 1900s, 20th century, 1948, Israel becomes a nation. You have a tetrad encompassing that time as well, 48, 49, encompassing that, where Israel becomes a nation on May 14th, 1948. It started, you have the tetrad right there, and we taught it, it's on the tape. The second one, now at that time they were attacked on May 14th, they were given a nation. Can a nation be born in one day? Yes, they were. The next day, May 15th, they were attacked by 5 nations. And they went from tragedy to triumph. And God gave them a victory. They got back their land for the first time in 2,000 years. The city of David that's been established 3,000 years ago, they're back home. They God promised them, and He said they will never be removed a second time off their land. They're there to stay. Let's say that. They're there to stay. Doesn't mean they're perfect people. It just means they're God's kids. That's it. So God takes care of His kids. The second one, 1967, the Six-Day War, the June War, you have a tetrad also, a blood red moons, 4 on Passover. So same pattern, Passover and Sukkot, Passover and Sukkot, first and last Jewish holidays with the 1967 war and the 2-year period as well. Between each of the holidays is about, you got 1 to 2, how many, what's the interval here? 1 to 2, 1, 2 to 3 is 2, 3 to 4 is 3. We have 3 intervals for 4, right? If I hold up 4 fingers, Passover, Sukkot, how many intervals are there? 3. There's about 6 months between each, 6, 6, 6. So you start to look and see some things. It's not pleasant. The blood red moon, a moon in Psalms, relates to the bride. The bride, God has one bride. It's Jewish and Gentile as long as they're believers through covenant in Jesus Christ. Period. There's no other way. All covenants come through the Son, because the term covenant is brit, which bar, it means son, yod, tav, means the Son's work at the cross. All covenants are through the Son. Abraham saw my day. They all have come to Christ. There's no other way to God. God is bigger than we know, but all the covenants will bring you to Christ. And if the Jews today, if they keep the covenant of Moses properly, they'll end up in the lap of Jesus Christ. If they don't, they won't. Yes. Is it being taped? No, I think we're past that. Are you streaming still? Yeah, streaming's fine. Good. We'll remember. So, you can tape it there. You can tape this on phone if you want. So the blood red moon start. Now, what's little known in some of the books that you see, because they lack the Jewish perspective, is why is it the first and last? It always means something. In the Bible, if I wanted to tell you, read Psalm 22, and we're back in the 1st century, there's no chapter verse markings. How would you know to go to 22 what? It means nothing. There's no nomenclature. It's just text. If we said, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And then said Nishlam, which has different words here, means it is finished, paid in full. By giving you the first and last words, it means everything is encompassed in between. Like bookends. So telling you the first words or verse, and the last, it means I'm referring to the whole chapter. That's standard procedure. So when Jesus did that on the cross, he said that whole Psalm 22 applies to me. Right? Okay. Now when it's the first and last holiday, it means it encompasses the entire year of holiday, from the first to the last. It means everything in between is now in play. Now it goes from Passover to Sukkot, May to September. It's a lunar calendar, so it could vary, August, September, March, April, and then to the next year. You're 18 months, 666. So you have a span here, and a blood red moon in the time of Christ on 4/3/33. The blood red moon, he got crucified on the Passover. He is our Passover. He preached at age 12, and his first, and we came into the temple on the Passover, which he always did as a Jew. At age 12, as the Passover, he was crucified on Passover, and on 4/3/33, the only blood red moon over Jerusalem was in the 10-year span of Pontius Pilate. Over Jerusalem, a blood red moon, at the exact same time Jesus Christ is pouring out his blood over his bride, the blood was being poured out as a coloration over the moon, which represents his bride, at the foot of the Virgin, the bride, the mother. How do you make that stuff up? How do you arrange the stars, the only blood red moon, on the same day he's crucified, which is once for all, never before, never since, never again? And it's only one blood red moon seen over Jerusalem itself. In 10 years, the Pontius Pilate ruled there. Just kind of happened. On earth as it is in heaven. We're entering that time period tomorrow. Now I'm going to share a personal thing with you only because I'm going to ask you to pray with me for this. Now this is my job. But those of you who it touches, I'm going to you just raise your hand if it touches you, and we'll tag that in our spirit, or just nod your head. For the, I don't know, was it 6 months at least? 9/11? It's been going on for me for months. I see it almost every day, sometimes several times a day. 9/11, 9/11, 9/11, 9/11, 9/11, 9/11. I look at the clock, click 9/11. Look at the TV, there's a cop car with 9/11. We all lived through 9/11. But in the last X number of months, God's pushed me to start to stand in a gap where I'm studying. I look up, it's 9/11. I'm not looking for it, it's looking for me. God makes sure I see it. He says, pray. Pray, 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 pray. If my people who are called by my name humble themselves. It's like an eagle. You tuck your wings in. Stop the pride garbage. Humble themselves and pray. And seek my face and turn from their wicked ways. Then I'll hear from heaven. I'll forgive their sin and restore their land. It starts to hit tomorrow. Tomorrow, Israel goes into judgment in the sky. What was it? Mark saw before is March 20th this year. The eclipse of Regulus, Leo. It was an asteroid eclipse, not of the sun or moon, but Regulus is Leo. It's the lion. And the strip of its path covers right through New York City and strips up. And they had a clip of the one that was from 2005. Mark Bowman sent me. And this was just a few weeks ago. There's things happening all day long. Regulus is the light of the king, the light of the lion, excuse me. Jupiter is Tzedek, it's the righteous one. Regulus is the lion. And that light's shining toward us. You could see that with the naked eye. God wanted to make sure you see the lion. And that eclipse goes right in front of it and blacks out the light. That asteroid, that rock, blocks the light out of Regulus for 2.10 seconds. That's a long time. And it goes black over New York City and a strip going north, a little in the Caribbean, and runs up this way and a diagonal to the left side. The heavens are talking. That means the light of the lion was not shining on earth. Now, if you study, and you should all read or get the tapes and study The Harbinger carefully, Jonathan Cahn, there are real signs out there. They are not a fait accompli. They're not a, like you could do nothing about it. The reason God shows us is so you can do something about it. If my people, but now you know where to focus your guns. You see something coming, God's warning you. Why did he send Jonah to Nineveh when they were 40 days out from being totally destroyed under direct God judgment? Because God desires mercy over judgment. James 2:13, Jacob 2:13. Mercy will be merciless to the one who shows no mercy. Mercy triumphs over justice. Mercy will be merciless to the one who shows no mercy, but mercy triumphs over justice. Ezekiel 22:30-31. God is looking for a man to stand in the gap so he doesn't have to pour back your sin upon your own head, but he could find none. God desires mercy, mercy, mercy all the time. He doesn't want to give you back the bill. He already paid the bill. But if you don't want his price, then you pay. And it's too expensive. And God says, somebody better stand in the gap here. I'm one that's tagged. Anybody here who that touches your heart enough, you must start praying even while you're sitting there. 9/11 is the same thing. Well, I was asked many times, I asked a number of times, what 9/11 means what? It's the same thing here. It's a judgment on this country. Why was it blacked out over New York City? When you look at the Harbinger, which I thank you for giving us, the Harbinger, and you look at it carefully, New York City is where this all started. Washington's inauguration was in New York City. It wasn't in Washington, D.C. Everything started there. The only thing that didn't get destroyed 9/11, that area, was the church building that was over there. This is the foundations of this country have been rocked because we have taken our eyes off the ball, and we've let in leadership at all different levels, in government and civil, every which way, thinking they're going to do the right thing. It's wrong. If my people, now as tough as it is now, God didn't say they're the ones who have the power. He says, my people work with me, will get this done. Now this country is bleeding, and it's actually hemorrhaging. If America goes, the rest of the world except Israel is going. Israel stands alone. If America's food starts to dry up, and it's not a big food supply here, better make sure God's our source, huh? Conservative estimates, there's 195 countries in the world, depending on who you count, plus or minus. 100 countries will go hungry if our farmers stop farming, producing. We feed over 100 nations. America is a big boy on the block, and God has blessed this country because America has been good. Alexis de Tocqueville, who came here, a Frenchman, figuring out in the early 1800s what made America so great. He looked at the military, looked at the government, was not impressed. When he went into the churches, the church buildings, these white place, steeple fence and cross on the top, and he walked in, he goes, I got it. America, his famous statement is this, he goes, America is great because America is good. America is great because America is good. America is great because America is good. But the day she ceases to be good, she will cease to be great. You're not going to force an unbeliever to stop being in unbelief. But when you shine your light, which is a command form in a language, it doesn't say let, shine your light in such a way. Shine your light. See, I've turned this way. Shine your light in such a way that men may see your good works and glorify your Father who's in heaven. Everybody counts.